Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich, and I have tea.
And I've got coffee in a Monopoly mug that I see. And it says chance on it.
Yep.
I wish it had like something at the bottom of it. It was just like, oh, you've got £10 for a beauty contest, or fuck off, you're a mug. And the irony being...
that you've spilt coffee in your lap to look at the bottom of the mug.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Like, do not pass go, do not change your trousers.
Shaking with burns, and I'm like, but I got the £10 out of it.
I won the beauty pageant.
I got the good gag. So this week we are going to be, it feels like ages since we spoke, and I'm going to be honest, like, I'm going to take a weight off from the Final Fantasy extravaganza, because that was like...
It was a lot.
It was a lot. It was. Do you know,
Fiona has apologised profusely as well. She feels like she came on a bit strong. Said to me afterwards, Faz had the look of a man that lost the will to live at one point.
No, I was. Yeah, okay. I probably did look like that, and I probably had. I don't know what I really tapered off in terms of I guess what. Like being awake,
finalising your fantasy.
Yeah, towards the end of it was the Final Fantasy 15 extended edition.
When we got to about 4 hours in,
it was no one's fault.
Final Fantasy,
and I genuinely was at the time thinking, oh, Fiona's done a really good job of selling this to me. Like, it sounds like a different type of experience that I would be interested in. You know, maybe having in my life, and probably even the pocket version would be like quintessentially good for me. But yeah, I was tired, so you know. But that was no one's fault. So you know, Fiona, if you listen to this podcast, you know, apology not accepted.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a little bit of a different sort of lighter podcast. Lighter makes it sound like it was heavy and dark and.
I mean, it was
horrendous. It was like lighter podcast where we talked about our guilty gaming pleasures.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Why are we doing that?
Mince.
Sure, yeah.
So, what is a guilty pleasure, right? Because I think everyone has a different sort of idea in their head. Now, when I looked up the Oxford English Dictionary version or something...
Oh, you did research?
Well, just into, Wikipedia.
The definition
what was a guilty pleasure? And it said that it was something that people enjoyed, but not necessarily that most of other people enjoy.
Okay.
But for me, like, a guilty pleasure, like, I feel like, is just something where... And this will probably sort of talk... We're gonna do 5 games each, maybe.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, around
might
about
lump a couple together on the sly.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think that with mine, the way that I've sort of thought about it is that it's not so much guilt as it is like I'll play a game and I'm not gaining anything from it in terms of progression, or I feel like I'm going somewhere with it necessarily. Like, as in, I'm whiling away the time, but I feel great about it. Like, as in, I just feel like it's sort of filling my boots. Like,
yeah.
And I don't have to explain myself to anyone else. Like, as in, that's where it's, feels like, I guess that's the guilty pleasure of it, is almost just like, like, I'm just taking time just for me. And it's almost like you don't have to worry about whether anything's actually being gained from it. Which some people might call, inverted commas, a waste of time. But, just because I didn't get a fucking crochet duvet out of it or whatever. Do you know, can you crochet a duvet? Maybe. Anyway, just because I didn't get that out of it didn't mean that it wasn't useful for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. And like, because as soon as we thought about doing this, my first thought was, I'm a hairy bloke in my mid-30s with a few extra pounds, lifelong nerd, and I play video games habitually. Like, the fuck have I got to feel guilty about? Like, I'm having a great time. Like, I'm only slightly sad. And despairing at my dwindling time on this earth.
Yeah. But like, what else can you do? Like, as a human
I could
being?
go outside.
No, I know. Yeah, fuck that.
But it's, much as anything,
it's windy out there.
It is windy as fuck out there. But like, I don't think it's like nowadays. I think you're going to have to go a long way to find a gaming guilty pleasure that is genuinely like an atrocious game, objectively. So, like, for my part, there's a couple of bits in there that I'm just kind of embarrassed to tell people that I enjoy playing.
Okay.
And like that, it's not a sort of like, oh, I'm playing this game and it's terrible and oh, I love it so kind of stuff. It's just fucking stupid, is what it is. It's just stupidity.
I thought I could rely on you for that.
For reasons I will get into, of which there are a few.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like then yours sound like a bit more like that, whereas mine are not necessarily that I think that everyone will appreciate them or anything, but I feel like like they've probably been popular to a lot of people at one point, and it's just sort of like I have fond feelings for them, and almost like just because they were popular at the time, like doesn't mean they're like hidden away, I guess then, but my feelings are just good vibes through that sort of
and I think doing this podcast has taught me probably more so than anything else, like. And I know I
charge by the hour.
I'm going to preface this by saying, like, I know I have gone in several times and said that I deliberately do not judge and score things objectively because fuck that, I am a person with opinions. And it's going to be totally subjective.
I want the robotic numbers.
But like, what the whole process of playing something and trying to work out what I like about a game and what I don't like about a game has taught me that there will always be something that someone likes about any of these games, no matter how bad it is, with maybe a couple of exceptions. But you've got to really get down to the dregs before you get to that point, I think.
I've got a good example of a guilty pleasure of mine that I picked up today, which is that everybody, a lot of people seem to like, is Big Jet TV. So basically just a guy like who goes out and films all the big jumbo jets landing at Heathrow Airport, but during storms. So, like, but...
He's had a fun couple of days.
Yeah, exactly. And it's obviously, in the UK at the moment, there's sort of, guys in America will be like, storms, what are you talking about? Like, tornadoes and shit. And we're like, 90 mile per hour winds. Ooh. But, yeah, there's been some stormy weather, and it's mostly been windy. And but the great thing about it is, and this is what I think is quite British about it, is that he's gone to do it, and you think there's some sort of schadenfreude where he's sort of like he's reveling in other people's sort of like fear of landing an aircraft, but actually he's quite motivational and positive about it. He's like, "Go on, son, yeah, go on, get it down," and just like
do the crab.
Yeah, it's this Cockney geezer like loving it, and it just makes it just so much. Like I wouldn't watch it if it was someone just like watching it and leering over it and going, "Oh, they might die." Like as in no, it's like someone's just like like really talking the pilot down via YouTube, and I'm like, and that's a guilty pleasure to me. Like as in like I'm not gaining anything from that, but I just feel pretty good about it.
Yeah,
It's sort of a humanity thing. Like, isn't well done to this person. Like, so, do you want to kick us off? Should I kick us off?
I don't mind going first.
Go.
Like,
bring us into land with the first guilty pleasure of yours.
The way I approached this, right, was I went in and I wrote down an absolute shit ton of stuff. Then you said, "Shall we do 5?" So I've gone through and I've just like looped a load and done my best.
I mean, I had about 10, but then I've whittled it down to 5 for now, and I think we'll probably park some.
If we come back again, that's fine.
You got like 45 guilty pleasures.
I don't have 45, but I've got some in here that are just like they're still floating around the collection for different reasons. So like, like Virtua Tennis 3 gets an honourable mention because we played it loads at uni. Still in the collection because why wouldn't it be? It's nice memories, but objectively not exactly a critical darling.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I've got it for the PSP, and I've heard good things about it, so I'm looking forward to playing that at some point. Yeah.
But as well, like I kind of went through a bit of a wobbly crisis for what to include in the list. So I've got things in here like Monster Hunter Rise, where I paid £30 for DLC that I then realised I couldn't access until I basically played a different storyline in its entirety, so that's like another 15 or 20 hours.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
So you have like a kind of single player sort of arc you can do, and then you have the multiplayer ones. And the DLC you can only access once you've got to a certain stage in the multiplayer things. And as somebody who didn't have Switch Online, that's kind of difficult. So I without realising, spent 30 quid on DLC that I couldn't access for like another 20 hours, and I am still working on it. So that feels pretty dumb. However, for actual guilty pleasure,
that's just a guilty pain.
Yeah,
guilty,
that's
guilty
just
gear.
Stupid aside.
Don't know what that game is, but anyway, I
Beat
see.
'em up, quite fun.
Cool. Yeah, fair enough.
So, in fact, that's a handy segue. Beat 'em ups. So, the first one, Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive.
A lot of Virtua chat already.
I mean, I mentioned it once, but sure.
Virtua Tennis.
Oh yeah, Virtua Tennis, my mistake. So Virtua Fighter 2, when you're playing it in the arcade or on the Saturn and stuff like that, is polygons. It's a 3D fighting game, and quite striking to look at. It's good fun as well. Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive is not polygons. It's 2D sprites.
Oh, right, okay.
So, like, nowadays, you would say that it was a kind of hip, kind of demake kind of thing. At the time, it was absolutely fucking lambasted for, like, just being a piss-poor port because all they could do was make a shitty 2D knockoff. But, like, a lot of the key parts of the game are there. Crucially, a lot of them aren't. Because of the fact it's a fucking Mega Drive game.
Why have them done such a shit job of that? Is in just
you couldn't
the capability.
You couldn't do the 3D.
Yeah.
Like it just you wouldn't have been able to do it justice. Really.
Were there any 3D games at all before the PlayStation Dreamcast?
Yeah, you had like Virtua Racing on the Mega Drive and stuff like that. But that needed a special chip on the cartridge and was like crazy money and all that kind of stuff. I imagine. So Virtua Fighter 2, they kind of took the path of least resistance and just made what is basically a demake.
Yeah.
However, it will forever and a day have a special place in my heart because that was the first fighting game I ever actually like tried to seriously play.
Yeah.
Rubbish at it, still rubbish at it. I still play it and I still enjoy it. And I think arguably I enjoy it more than the 3D one, I think. Just for the nostalgia factor.
So are you genuinely shit at it? Because if it's one that you first tried and like you love...
I genuinely am. So like the Virtua Fighter games are a little bit different to a lot of the ones that I gravitate towards, like your kind of Street Fighters, just because of the way the combos and the moves work and stuff like that. So the inputs are going to be a bit different and relies less on the kind of Street Fighter style of putting commands in.
Yeah.
And it's just a method that I've never really gelled with. And similarly, like with Mortal Kombat and some other ones, games where you have a dedicated block button, I'm terrible at. I always forget it exists. I'm so used on something like Street Fighter to just pushing back away from whoever it is you're fighting that I don't have the muscle memory for it. And it Virtua Fighter 2 is kind of both of those at the same time. But like Virtua Fighter 5 was one that I really enjoyed, but again, like genuinely terrible at. And a conversation I was having the other day revolved around, games you wished you were good at and aren't. And Virtua Fighter 5 is probably in that list for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my first pick out of the gate,
should have
Virtua
that
Fighter 2.
conversation on the pod at some point. I mean, sounds like you've been cheating on me with someone else.
Well, it was my wife, and it was after we watched a YouTube video covering that exact topic, so it's not exactly original.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is why I didn't suggest it.
That's acceptable.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's a valid topic.
It might not be original, but 12 people might want to hear about it from us. So yeah, Anyway, cool. Do you? You got a flow? Are you going to go into another one? Or
I can go to another one if you like. How do you want to do it?
I'll chip in with one, and then we'll just see how we
go
go
back and forth.
Yeah, cool.
Good. Cross that off before I forget.
So, the first one that came to mind, I don't know why. And specifically, Angry Birds played on the iPad back in 2009/10. But specifically the Angry Birds seasons, so almost like the sequel, effectively, to Angry Birds, when I feel like the pinnacle of Angry Birds was reached. And I think for about 2 or 3 years, I was infatuated with the idea of Angry Birds. And before the Star Wars came out in space and they started adding different sort of mechanics to it, it was just a bird fucking up some pigs. You know what I mean?
You, the birds, the wall.
Just, the simplicity of it all. But the reason that I kind of feel like this is a guilty pleasure is, whilst there are levels that you go through in different challenges, like you just alluded to, it's just a flick of your finger every single time. And praying that you put it in the right space. Like, that sounded weird. But just, I remember sort of, like, I think at one time, like, this is almost like a shingles sort of thing for you. Like, I remember being really ill and being in bed for a lot of time, like, as in for like a week or so, and it just being out, like, for the first couple, I think Halloween had just been out, and maybe Christmas had just come out, the very first sort of, or Halloween or whatever they call it and stuff. And just rinsing that game over and over and stuff, and just, like, not getting any better necessarily, just, like, going through the levels again and again, but some sort of therapeutic effect of
just the motion of it,
yeah,
the colours,
exactly, probably,
that's what you need sometimes.
Like a 1-year-old child, like someone came in, put some bubbles and the sensory colours up for me,
hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Yeah, I loved it. So yeah, I just think obviously it's evolved into a bigger beast now with the movies and things like that, and there's games on consoles, and I've tried to play Angry Birds on the PSP recently because it was a PS3 mini. You could get it as a PSP, and it's quite difficult on the PSP because they don't let this screen kind of like move across, so you have to use the shoulder buttons, whereas just swiping across and using your fingers to expand it and stuff on an iPad was really good. And that was it was my first. It was Aaron, that is when I lived with Aaron a long time ago, who's been on the podcast previously about 20 episodes ago. He got an iPad quite early on, and it was almost like I would just borrow his iPad and be like, I'm having this now. Like, take it to my bedroom. But in a movie where it'd be like, oh, he's going to go watch porn. No, he's going to go bang this shit out of Angry Birds. You can probably take the iPad back and there'd just be like an arc where my finger had been dragged across it. Sort of like, why are all these pixels dead in this game? Just like, that'd pretty much be it, I think.
How hard were you pressing the screen?
Well, those pigs have pissed me off. But yeah, just really light-hearted, just not much going on necessarily, but I felt like and there was lots of people playing it at the time. Obviously, it became very, very popular, but you don't play it with anybody else. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't go down the water cooler the next morning and go, oh, level 35, fuck me,
Them pigs, am I right?
Show me how many stars you got. Whereas I would never bring that up, obviously, because I'd be embarrassed that I was like 1 starring every level. On the very last bird, it just rolled down the hill and just about clipped the last bit of ice. You're like, yes! Oh, the sensation of just like, when you see, like, there's nothing quite like the last pig slowly rolling off like a piece of stone. And you're like, come on. So yeah, that's why that's in my guilty pleasures. So
nice.
There we go.
Nice. Yeah. So this next one's a bit of a cheat because I've got 2 in it, but for basically the same reason.
Okay.
So Dead or Alive 5 and Caladrius Blaze. We're talking about breasts.
Yeah.
So Dead or Alive 5. As anybody, like you're doing right now, the second you say to anybody who plays video games, Dead or Alive, immediately they think of breasts and the fact that they are just flying around everywhere in those games. They're basically got gravitational fields of their own. They're slapping people in the face. You've
made me blush.
Yeah, but they're all over the place. Caladrius Blaze is a shmup where I think it's made by I think it's the same team who make some of the more modern Raiden games.
Yeah.
So they know what they're doing. It's a good shmup. The thing is that there is a chain break mechanic in it, and at different stages of the boss fights, your enemy's clothes will fall off. And so you have a similar kind of a problem to Dead or Alive, where it's the kind of game that you wouldn't play in a room with polite company or any company.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Dead or Alive 2, I think I remember being 13 when that came out. Yeah. And it was literally 3 13-year-old lads playing this game. Kind of, you're enjoying this fighting game, and you're like, oh, this is good. And then you're and then you start looking around at each other, you kind of go,
what are we doing?
Yeah, who's got the erection now?
Yeah. So, the thing with Dead or Alive 5 and Caladrius Blaze is that they are both good games. Mechanically, if they were doing anything else with its lady parts, they would be good games, right? The problem is you can't tell anybody you're playing them, because anybody who knows either of them, that's the first thing they jump to. So, like, the reason that Dead or Alive is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine is that on the PS Vita, actually, to make it relevant, that was weirdly rehearsed, wasn't it? Oh, we didn't plan that at all. It's genuinely one of my favourite fighting games on the PS Vita, because it's simple enough that you can kind of get away with, you know, tiny buttons and cramped controls and all that kind of stuff. The problem is, you take Dead or Alive and the kind of baggage that comes with it, and you tell people you're playing it on a handheld, and people immediately only think one fucking thing.
That's not like on the bus. Like,
exactly. Oh, what's he doing? Looking at their mammaries flapping around in the wind.
Mammary flap.
It's just like, you just somehow feels even more seedy. And then they released DLC, like, where you're basically just ogling the girls. It's like, have we forgotten it's a fighting game? Like, what is this? Kudos to Caladrius Blaze, right? The shame break mechanic stays in the game, but you can turn off the illustrations and stuff like that. And I think it was a sign of growing up, where I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm just going to turn those off. Put some clothes on. You're probably cold. Like, it's fine.
Beating the shit out of you.
Have a cup of tea. Get a blanket on. You'll be all right. And yeah, whereas Dead or Alive, unfortunately, there is no avoiding what is going on there. But yeah, like, genuinely, if you can get over the embarrassment of telling people that you are playing these things, as I have just torn off this plaster, I can wholeheartedly recommend either of them for fans of, you know, beat 'em ups or shmups. It's just that whenever you tell anybody that you play either of them, they are gonna think you're a pervert.
Yeah, it's funny, you were sort of saying about there being add-ons that people seem to have bought on eBay every so often. We was talking before the podcast about sort of, you know, just scrolling down eBay and typing video games in and just seeing what comes up. There is, and someone's still not bought it, it's £25, a Dead or Alive 2 calendar that clearly it would be a kind of a collectible thing, but nobody wants to be seen to be buying that. And I'm like, it would be kind of like, you know, it's like brand new sealed and stuff. I'm like, I bet that could be worth like loads of money in the future, but it's like, how do you, when that comes through the post, how do you tell your children this is like, you know, it's
art!
It's for research purposes! And then deep down in your soul, you're like, this isn't for research.
That's the thing, ultimately. You know, you can sit there and say they're great games and protest, but ultimately you bought it, you filthy urchin. And that is the particular hill I am willing to die on this evening.
Hills. Particular hills.
Sorry, yes, hills, my mistake.
Cool, that was a good one. So, I've kind of got one a little bit similar, in a way, where you're doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing, or you feel like you shouldn't be doing, but in a game, and it's like, well, you know, fuck it, I'm having a great time. And that is Cabela's Big Game Hunter, or Dangerous Hunts.
Right.
I'll say that correctly. And so I remember playing this game with my friends on the PS2. Back in it was early 2000s, sort of Dead or Alive 2 territory. It was just one game was just like, you know, like pornography. The next game, killing animals. And yeah, there's something so strange about the idea that you get these really focused games around hunting game, like as in, but oddly satisfying, like, you know, and
I've seen it in stores and stuff a couple of times, and I've always just assumed it was like a kind of really slow-paced shooting gallery.
Yeah,
is that
it's absolutely
right?
not that. No,
Is
like,
it not?
it's there's some versions that I think maybe when it started off, 'cause it's been around for a while, so like since like the early 90s, like the sort of first Cabela's, I think they say that right, games were out and about. But yeah, it was kind of like a bit of an open worldy sort of thing. You got like a little area to kind of wander around in, like a forest area or something, and you would have to track the animals. And there was a lot of detail went into what weapons you took with you, what scents you had, and you can spend a long time tinkering with your setup to get that right, to attract animals into the area. And it's genuinely like an attempt to make a simulation of what hunting is like.
Yeah.
And recently I've played The Hunter, and that's on Game Pass. And yeah, it just, the simulation that goes into it, I'm going to be honest, like, as in, so graphically, whenever I played maybe like 3 or 4 of these, they've never been very good. Like, as in, it always feels very lo-fi, but the amount of detail I pack into it, in terms of actually what they want you to understand about hunting, is massive. That is it, and you can spend hours and hours just kind of like getting your setup right and thinking, I am a hunter. Like, I'm a fucking badass. Like, as in, except you're not, you're a weak human with a gun. But yeah, it's just very interesting just to sort of have that concept where you kind of, like, if you just stand back from it and go, I've just spent 4 hours hunting an imaginary animal that with an imaginary weapon, like, and felt quite happy doing it. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't think it's something I would do every single night, but certainly, like. But
if you're in the mood,
if in the mood, like, and the pathetic thing would always be like, I'd end up just catching a shitty little deer. Like, it wouldn't be like, like, as soon as like. You'd have to start off crawling and tracking the bears and the wolves and stuff. Like, I'll just shit the bed and die. Like, fall down a canyon. Like, just like the only 2 or 3 ways you could die. And like, one of them was just like falling, and it was like, I think fall damage was horrendous in Cabela's. So, but yeah, just I thought of that sort of, it'd be a good add-on to Dead or Alive, where it's like, do you admit that you just like, go out and mullering animals just for fun? Like, I know a lot of people do in real life. Yeah. Like, but on a game, a nerdy hunter. Like,
it seems kind of it's the kind of thing that I can imagine that you sort of get halfway through saying, and then you're like, wait, I'm simulating that. Yeah, and like that's quite often the case with video games.
I can't even bring myself to do it in real life, but I don't want to either. I don't know. Anyway,
well, arguably it's better, right? If you're simulating it and you're not doing it in real life, better that than doing it in real life and not simulating it.
Yes, so, yeah. It's like clay pigeon shooting.
Yeah,
sort of. There's fucking clay pigeons shitting on my roof.
But I can do one that's almost related to that.
Excellent. All these segues coming.
Yeah. Call of Duty.
Okay.
Specifically the campaigns. I can't remember the last time I played Call of Duty online. Which is controversial, I think, in 2024. Because I think that's the way a lot of the series has been leaning for quite a while now. I won't play it for years. But occasionally, I just have that urge to go into a bombastic campaign, sit there for the length of a few films over the course of a weekend or a couple of evenings, and feel like I've rolled credits on something and maybe had a good time doing it. Can be a bit hit and miss, but like I keep gravitating back towards the Black Ops games, which is what made the review of the one on the PS Vita I did back when so galling. Yeah. So like the first Black Ops game, I've replayed that campaign multiple times, and I tend not to do that. But I was going through my shelves for this list and found Black Ops 3, and I sat there going like, oh yeah, that story was shite, but then it did the thing where you could play through the story again, but it was the zombie version of the story, and like cool. That was fun.
Yeah,
like I just had that moment of like, the Call of Duty games are a load of wank, aren't they? And yet, occasionally, like I will get an itch that the only thing that will scratch it is a Call of Duty campaign.
Not to put you on the spot, then, what can you name a favourite?
My favourite one
campaign, or because not a lot of people. This is a guilty. I think this is a guilty pleasure because this is where you kind of go. I don't think many people necessarily openly go, oh, my favourite Call of Duty critically is this. Like,
it would be Black Ops 1.
Okay.
Like Modern Warfare, the original one, Call of Duty 4, is up there, but I like the kind of the sort of alternative Cold War kind of thing that Black Ops goes for. There is just something about that era and the narrative fun it can have with the kind of unreliable stuff. And like when it got a bit sci-fi, it kind of went off the rails a bit for me. But like the Cold War one they did much more recently was also a really, really good campaign, I thought. And it tried to do some interesting narrative stuff that didn't quite land as well as other games that have done similar things, I think. And if you want, military shooters with good campaigns that have like hard-hitting narrative stuff, everybody always points to Spec Ops: The Line, with good reason. And I think some of the Black Ops games have tried to do a kind of similar thing, and it's not quite worked. But, bless it for trying, eh? But like
patting Call of Duty on the head. Like, I think they'd be okay rolling around in the millions.
Yeah, God, they're piles of money that they sleep on. But like, there's a certain bombast to the campaigns, like the set pieces. When it's in the mood, engaging, and those would be some of my favourite ones, for sure.
I remember reading in Retro Game recently where they were talking about the team that I think they moved over from Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, which is like one of my favourite games ever. Like, is into I think they started making Call of Duty. Like, as in, and it was almost like you could see how you're like
the DNA.
Yeah, you're like, oh wow, okay, that's why that's kind of clicked. But then what it became in terms of, I guess, or what it has become, how it exists now it's crazy. It's madness. That it's just like it is absolutely the juggernaut that every single year without fail you can bring a Call of Duty out and droves of 18 to 24-year-old men will buy it and spend the entire night playing it like Harry Potter, like isn't like reading the book all in the first night. It's like people will just do it. It's like a zeitgeist thing.
Well, it's like the new release of a film in your favorite franchise or a season of your favorite TV show and stuff like that. I get where it comes from. I don't buy into it personally, and I haven't done for quite a while. Simply because I genuinely... Oh man, I'm going to sound like such an old man. I feel like the multiplayer side of things has taken so much focus, and it drags it down for me personally. And like the microtransactions and the fucking passes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So like the reboot of Modern Warfare, and in fact the Cold War campaign I've just mentioned, I've ended up part exchanging both of copies of those that I had floating around. Simply because I don't have enough space on any of my consoles to install it, because I have to install the Battle Royale stuff. Yeah. Like, I don't want that.
I think you can undo that. I think you can kind of like not... I'll speak from experience. You can kind of undo a little bit of that.
Yeah, you can, but it's a little bit of it. Yeah. It's not enough of it.
Yeah.
And like there was a lot of, I think Cold War... it was one of them where there was a couple of like side bits that I thought, oh, hey, that might be fun to check out, but it wouldn't let me do it because I didn't have XYZ installed, because I couldn't do this, that, and the other. It's like, but it all basically revolved around the multiplayer components, and you need those there to form the bedrock of the rest of this experience. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to penalise me for not wanting that shit, you can jog on.
It's so stupid, isn't it? It's just like, and like you say, clearly that must be there for they are subjugating their core, like that part of the market, right? It's just like don't come for the single player. It's there.
The easiest thing to remove from that list of things that's installed when you boot up the game is the single player.
Yeah.
And the rest of it just gets all tangled up together, and I think that's quite telling. And that is why it's on this list.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you know what they say, Rich. Opposites attract. And no one saw this coming. But on my list is Call of Duty Warzone, the Battle Royale.
Nice.
I'm so glad when you started speaking there. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And I've just sat there and just like milked it. So, on the complete flip of it, that is, we could not be more chalk and cheese, which is great. And that's why we're probably good for this podcasting gig. I have owned several Call of Duty games, Modern Warfare 2, the normal Call of Duty, like the original couple of Call of Duties, and Modern Warfare, the newer version, and another one. And I've never played a single player campaign ever in Call of Duty. Never.
Incredible.
I'm no, that's not lying or anything. The only thing I've played that is close to it is a Modern Warfare 2, which is the Spec Ops, which is kind of like it's almost like the third option. But you could play that online as well.
Yeah.
I think I probably referenced this before on the pod where you could get 3 stars and it was like 24 missions and they were like little mini missions, but you could do it with someone else.
Yeah.
And even then, I didn't do it by myself. Like every time I'd be like, I will wait until my partner in crime, who was my friend Dwayne at the time, like we would be like, right, are you on tonight? Yeah. It was like PS3 and it was like, and we'll do it together. Like we never did it separately. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I've only ever played multiplayer Call of Duty. So. And I want to get, I guess, the specific guilty pleasure that I get out of the Battle Royale Warzone situation. So I guess it all probably started with PUBG and that coming out. And that was like the original sort of, I guess, Battle Royale. I remember I bought that for like 25 quid, I think it was at the time. And me and my friends really got into that, but it was terrible. It was just an awful simulation, a third-person shooter simulation, and it just like the menus were awful. It was definitely designed for PC with clicking with a mouse. Trying to play it on a console was just so difficult. But but the concept of winning, being the 1 out of the 100, do you know what I mean? Like, as in just being the king for half an hour, like, as in, like even by hook or crook, whether you're hiding behind a rock. Or, you know, like the entire time, or you're blasting away and getting 20 kills. That never me, by the way. That's in just the tension that I kind of feel from every single time that I pick up a battle royale. Just keeps me alive. But I do not interact with any of the microtransactions. I've never bought the battle pass ever, and again. All my friends have, and they've all done it and bought into it at some point and stuff, and spent loads of money and points on stuff and guns and things. And for whatever buffs or, you know, like, is it whatever the fucking words are? Like, is this what I mean? I don't even know what the words are.
The opportunity to unlock different things.
Yeah, whatever
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that means to you, like, you know, it's never made a difference at all to my gaming experience. I've just had the stock person, the stock loadouts, like, and it's never really. I've never seemed to have made a difference necessarily to my skill level.
Crap I am.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's weird because like you kind of get to the point where you do feel like I'm a bit of a middling Call of Duty person, like, as in, so there are people that are definitely better than me, and you can tell that, like, as in, but at the same time, there are definitely people that are much worse than me, and you can tell that. So, and they got to a point where, so during the lockdown, because this is probably what did it for me. It was like, so it came out, I think, a couple of days before lockdown in the UK, like as in 2020 for COVID, and so I was still working, which was fortunate for me. But I was working these weird shifts where, for example, I was working like 6 o'clock in the morning between Monday and Friday, and had Saturday and Sunday to myself. My wife and son were in the house, and everything's kind of like, all the world kind of slowed down to kind of a halt mostly. But one thing that was thriving was Call of Duty Warzone.
Yeah. With
a lot of my friends who, most of them weren't working. And just on it every single night without fail. There would be 3 or 4 of us playing Call of Duty Warzone and just socialising and just feeling alive because you were together in some form. And weirdly enough, even after lockdown, for probably about, I'd say, 2 years, even that kind of still existed to the point where it was almost like it wasn't every night, but definitely once a week, if not twice a week, you know. But during lockdown, like, isn't there times where you just play until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, I've got to be up in like 2 hours for, like, you know, like, as in just be like for my family. But you'd be like, but what are we actually doing that day? Not much. Right, okay, well, I could probably just be in a vegetative state for, like, you know, like, in, like, but what I'm feeling right now, the moment that I'm living in, like, isn't the feeling I'm getting from that, like, you kind of never feel like you're going to get that again when you're under that sort of, I guess, pressure of living in that sort of lockdown thing. And then obviously that all passed, but then it still kind of kept its grip on me because they changed it up a little bit. And one thing they did really well, I thought, was the resurgence thing where they shortened it down, and this is where it really spoke to me. They shortened it down to sort of 15-minute games where, and you had, you know, a third of the amount of people in there. and you could come back, so it wasn't just one life. I wasn't very good at the Warzone one life battle royale thing, like as in, you know, and going to the gulag and having the pressure of trying to fight someone in prison with a knife or whatever. Like, is that I wasn't about that life.
Standard procedure.
Yeah. As soon as they dropped Resurgence and they were like, you can have as many lives as you like as long as someone else in your team stays alive. And I'm like, well, that's how I've always played Halo. Like, as in, if there's that, you know, like, what usually happens in Halo, I'll say to my mates, I'll be like, you stay alive, I'm gonna go and fucking kill all the grunts, like, as in have a, you know, like, as in even if they go, well, it's my turn to do that. No,
You stay here.
Yeah. No, you hold, you hunker down. Like,
stay here, spawn point.
You are. You are the pivot. You are the linchpin of this operation. I'm the fucking idiot, like, as in, you know, and that'd be it. I'd just be off, like, as in, you know, and it was always like really well known that I'd just be the person that like was on the other side of the island, like, why have you dropped over there? But like, because it's fun. It's just stupid. It's just, you know, like, there's no sense to it. Like, you know, like,
I'm living.
Yeah. It's like every other team's thinking tactically, and I'm just trying to drop on people's heads, like, as in, you know, just to get that one time out of 20 where, like, you know, I get the kill with a knife, and I'm like, ha! Like, as in, you know.
Some Call of Duty players just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as in, you know, and yeah. So just, it's weird, isn't it? Because it's just got, I guess, opposite sort of feelings on it, but you know, that. The guilty pleasure part of it is just, I don't know, like, as in, yours is very insular, which is, you know, great in its own way, and mine's very extrovert. That it's just sort of like, I'm just showing how much of a fucking idiot I am, but like, I'm just enjoying that, you know. But yeah, so, you know, that's my bite back. But that's really cool that we've managed to pair that together.
Yeah.
In a chalk and cheese sandwich that, you know, I would eat. So.
I mean, I don't have a good segue for the next one, so I guess it's an accompanying beverage. Or a side.
A gazpacho of...
Yeah, the gazpacho of this. AEW Fight Forever.
Oh, right, okay.
Is a colossal guilty pleasure at the moment. So I probably last year started getting back into wrestling. I think I've mentioned before. And I basically, through being off ill and not wanting to do anything but just zone out in front of the TV, ended up watching a shit ton of old wrestling videos. And between that and staring down the business end of what was probably borderline shopping addiction, maybe, for buying video games.
It was fine.
Well, it seemed like a good way of like weaning myself off of that kind of impulse buy. I've watched a video about a game, I've read about it in Retro Gamer, I will therefore go and buy the game.
Yeah.
It was something else to kind of fill some of that time and headspace. And off the back of some of that, I started watching some of the more recent WWE stuff. I was like, it's fine, it's fun, it's just not really speaking to me like it used to.
Yeah.
And then I discovered AEW, and I really appreciate what they're trying to do as a kind of a company, a promotion, I guess. And the roster is a bit more varied, I find. You know, you scroll through the WWE website roster, and most of them wouldn't.
As you do.
Wouldn't leave. Well, I did for research purposes for this. Most of them confirmed my theory that most of them wouldn't need much spit and polish to basically be a model.
Yeah.
Whereas AEW have some of the people that aren't necessarily like that. They've got a better range of body types and face shapes and people that have lost teeth and stuff like that.
They're all haggard as fuck. It's okay. It's
not all of them, but there are more haggard as fuck people in there. There is a higher ratio of haggard as fuckery.
I would have that as our tag team name.
It's a good one. But like between that and the like, it's got kind of a more international bent. Like it's got more. It feels like it's got more upfront partnerships with like indie promotions and like New Japan Wrestling and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more interchangeable. You see some of these faces pop up. There's a lot of people from back in the day. So, you know, nice little trips down memory lane for seeing some of them still doing the rounds and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of new talent that's really good. But like, yeah, I like what they're doing. Not only that, but when they put out Fight Forever, they were up front and wanted it to be kind of retro in its feel.
Okay.
And it feels like the kind of modern iteration of like the old No Mercy and like WrestleMania games and stuff like that. To control it feels very similar.
I mean, and that's a positive, obviously, because that's a time that everyone talks about, that best wrestling games ever, sort of around that 2000 era and stuff, isn't
exactly.
it?
And it hits a sweet spot for me where it's fun. It's not very it could be more polished, I think is fair to say. I wouldn't go as far as say it was like glitchy or broken or janky or anything like that, but I could see why someone might. But it's it's one of those things that I can definitely appreciate what the company as a whole is trying to do for wrestling, and I can appreciate what they were trying to do with the game. And so you end up with this point where it's like a load of DLC wrestlers are coming out, and people are kicking off online about how it feels like a cash grab. You're only getting one character for this, that, the other. And I'm like, no, take my fucking money. I must keep you alive. Someone's got to keep the lights on, and it's not going to be Tony Khan with his billions. Take my money.
But that's nice that you're supporting it like that. And like you say, it's like it's making you feel good. You've always been very good at conveying, something that makes you feel good. You will happily put money into it to keep it going.
I consider myself a patron of the arts.
Yeah.
Even if that art is hitting people in the face.
It fucking is. It's such a good art. It's my favourite art.
But that's the thing. Genuinely, to watch some of the AEW stuff, it's not as unremittingly, gut-wrenchingly violent as some of the stuff used to be on the the old WWF, WWE stuff. But it hits a sweet spot between that and the kind of modern glossy approach and that WWE have, and some of the kind of the stuff that we've gone to see in Leeds and stuff like that, the kind of homegrown, rough around the edges kind of approach. It sits in a really nice spot for me personally. So yeah, more than happy to support that. And long may it continue.
We've not been in a while, have we?
No, we haven't. We should.
But Tyler Wrestling moved out of Leeds to Huddersfield, but there's been a couple recently that I've looked at and I've been like, should we go some? So we'll chalk that up soon.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah. And we could maybe make an appearance. Haggard as fuck. One plays Call of Duty single, one multiplayer.
Oh, they're so kooky. What
look at their memory flaps. I was going to go in a different direction, but I'm going to stick on the sport theme. And I've always loved Wii Sports.
Yep.
And Switch Sports. That's a nice little guilty pleasure for me. I feel like, Wii Sports kind of if you think about packing games and you went, all right, Tetris versus Wii Sports. How many people were picking Wii Sports as the game that they would play out of those? I think me. I think I would be picking that. I'm a bad gamer. I just am. I'm a bad person. I like the cheese. I love the bowling. I love the tennis. I love the golf. And I love the new one on Switch Sports, Shambara. Where you're just swinging your stick and stuff and jumping up and down. You're just get off the fucking platform and die in the water. And just the golf is so you just. It's so untechnical, but you think you're a golfer. I'll just point my remote down. Oh, it's the wrong way around. Oh, but yeah, just again, there's no point where I think you would ever play that by yourself necessarily. I think maybe once or twice where I was really trying to hone my bowling game. I was right, better get my practice
hours training.
I think between second and third year university for me, I remember living by myself for a month. Everyone else had gone home for the summer, and I was working at McDonald's, and I was the only thing I was doing was working at McDonald's, drinking, eating Domino's, watching the 2008 Beijing Olympics, which is in by myself constantly, whatever the fucking event was on, and Wii Sports bowling. But not even stood up anymore, just sat down.
Just flinging
on a futon, just kind of going, Dominoes in one hand, Wii remote in the other. But that feels like... then I kind of speak about that memory out loud and go, that sounds amazing.
It does sound pretty fun.
That's so good.
Maybe not for an entire month.
Just, like
definitely good for an evening or two.
Yeah, like you're there going, oh, I'm watching these actual Olympians, and they're like, well, how many of these people could beat me at this 10-pin bowling? Come on now. The depressing thing is, though, and I've well documented this with yourself, is that now, and I'm happy to completely share this, is that Sally, like my wife, and even Oscar, my son, like completely hammer me at the switch bowling, and I've got on the old Wii bowling, you used to like get real bonuses for that. Actually, putting a bowling action on it, like trying to spin it into the, like you would do if you were a 10-pin bowler.
Yeah.
Now it's just like if you do it as straight as fuck, like as in right down the middle and hit that middle pin right in the middle as slow as you want, you get a strike. And like so, Sally's like amazing at it. She's getting like I think the last score was 257, and I was like how, and like mine was like 120, and I'm like oh, and then she's like well, what are you doing? You're doing this weird flicky action, and I'm like it's not weird.
I'm bowling.
This is how the professionals do it. They don't get it. Like you just don't get it. And then like Oscar's just sat there going, "Daddy, shit." Like, it's like, oh great. So I need to go back. I need to really work on my mechanics.
Yeah. Take a month out.
Yeah.
Go to the mountains. Yeah. Get some dominoes in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Watch some Olympics. But yeah, it's there's a time and a place for Wii Sports and Switch Sports, and that is probably not alone. But yeah, just I wouldn't say they're maligned per se, but it's like people just look past fun too much sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like you have to look into it a bit too much and everything. It's just like like just have a good time and don't worry about it as much. Don't worry about life as much. Just enjoy yourself a little bit. So you got room for one more?
I got room for one more.
Go on, let's have a quick fire round.
It's another sport one, actually. Cool. Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer.
Okay.
Back from that era when they kind of ran out of ideas for games, so they just went person, pro, thing. And a game is born. So yeah, Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer is basically a watery version of Tony Hawk's. It wished. It's not good. It washed. So it's it says, oh, no two waves the same on the box. They're all waves. So it's
the algorithm makes it that there's more the same wave.
Pretty sure statistically likely there's some similarities between the waves. But it's kind of the same as the Tony Hawk's games where you are atop a board and you are doing tricks. And that's kind of it. It tries to lean into surfer culture and all that kind of stuff, which I know fuck all about. But, it's got some nice touches, like Kelly Slater narrating some of the bits and bobs. He sounds so bored. He sounds so far away from the microphone. He sounds like he's in a small shack somewhere in the car park. It's pretty rough on the eyes nowadays. Like, it's not great to look at. But the only other kind of surfing thing I can think of is like, you go back to your California games and stuff like that on like some of the old home computers and things like that. So surfing games do not come along terribly often, as far as I'm aware.
Like the Perfect Wave.
Like the Perfect Wave. And, I remember renting this once or twice back in the day and have some fun memories of just trying it and giving it a go and thinking, this is actually pretty crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've got it in the collection and all that kind of stuff because Have
you got it on PlayStation or
GameCube?
Oh, GameCube. I was going to say, because I thought at the time it was like, not that it's necessarily exclusive, but I only ever remember seeing it on Xbox, the original Xbox. I don't remember seeing it like on any other console. So
no, it got as far as GameCube, and I mean, in fairness to the game, that's quite possibly where a lot of the stuff, like the narration sounding as bad as it does, the video being as bad as it is to look at, comes from, because it's had to shrink down to that tiny little disc. But yeah, like it tries, bless it, but that Tony Hawk's formula does not translate particularly well to it.
I mean, I will, give it sort of kudos for teaching me that Kelly can be a man's name. Like that, I did not know
that's true.
Before that game. That was the first time that I was like,
you should watch Kelly's Heroes. It'll blow your mind.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I See, I thought that was maybe the guy's second name. And I was
Probably
like, yeah. Is it Kelly from Saved by the Bell? That's that's who we expected to be on the box, and it wasn't. So lastly, then there's absolutely no segue. There's no the water on this game. It could not be more flat. Like, as in, there's nothing happening on this water. And the last game I want to do is Transport Tycoon. Nice. on MS DOS, 1994, I think it was, and that having a Windows 95 PC that could boot up DOS was great. And I think it was the only game that I think I probably played in DOS, MS DOS. Do you say DOS, MS? What did the cool kids say?
I would say DOS, but what do I know?
Anyway, I mean, what anyone know. And yeah, so have you ever played it?
No.
So I think you'd really like it. But you can only really get it on, it's like OpenTTD it's called now, and you can get it on Android and Steam, but you can't get it anywhere else. It really annoys me. Like, it'd be great on Switch. It'd be perfect screen size on Switch. And trying to do it on a phone, it's impossible. So someone needs to port OpenTTD. And Transport Tycoon Deluxe was I guess they did like a bigger version. And I think more people had that, and that actually was like a PC game.
Yeah.
I had the original MS-DOS game, and it is a Sim City sort of situation. But the great thing about it is that you start in 1950, I think it is, and you are developing transport systems. You can develop anything from, like, I guess, bus services, train services, boat services, airplane services, and all those can kind of diverge into, excuse me, into cargo or into passengers. And you can set it however hard you want, so you can make it go quite quickly, game speed, and you can have as many competitors as you like as well. So CPU competitors, you can have one to make it as easy as possible. I could have up to, I think it was up to 8 maybe, and you're all a different colour. I always picked red, Liverpool Chiefs. You would always get a little bit of a mini head start over your competitors in terms of setting up your first stations, and you would be building a small sort of conglomerate, and it would be steam trains to start off with. That was always the easiest thing to do. Have a passenger service between this one small village to the next small village, and you make some money for that. And the great thing about this is, though, the towns and villages, villages, towns and cities build up around you, and how much servicing you give them. Right. So the more cargo and passenger services you put on, the bigger the cities become, the more money you make. So actually, you don't have to worry about all the building shit, really. You have to worry about building stations and stuff, and making tunnels through hills, and it's truly brilliant. Like, and I remember playing this as a kid, and I guess it must have been sort of 7 or 8 or something, and it was as easy for me to be able to do that on a PC. And you can pause it and have a little think about what you need to do next and stuff, and just absolutely sensational. And I'm so shocked that whilst there are lots of other sim games around now, like like things like 2 Point Hospital, that have sprung from Theme Hospital and things like that, to not have a true Transport Tycoon Deluxe successor kicking around now. You still get you can get like Roller Coaster World and things like that, but like this was just like, it was amazing. I'm so shocked that there isn't an actual like version of it nowadays.
And that's how Faz made his millions.
Well, this is it though. I genuinely think that you could do, and little things that were quite satisfying about it, when you just be sitting, and sounds silly, and this is kind of going back to the big jet TV at the start, where like occasionally you would build across someone else's, like a competitor's train track or something. It would let you do that, and it'd be like, and it'd pop up with a news flash in the top corner. It'd be like, Fireball kills 30, and you're like, and you go, oh, fuck, I hope that wasn't my train. And you're like, oh no, my train was okay. I had the quicker train, so it mullered the other competitors, and you're like, ha, I took you out, bitch. It was great. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and you could just while away again a lot of time, and you would go into the future even as well, so it would get up to the 2010s, 2020s. You it was like Championship Manager, just go
2010.
Just go for ages. Like, you could go as long as you wanted, really. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Nice. And you could just spend time, and just restart it every single time. Go back to 1950, do it a little bit different every time. It just self-generate a new island. So if you have got a Steam Deck, I think probably the best thing to do, or a PC even, that is, and definitely get open TTD and enjoy some Transport Tycoon in your life.
Nice.
Cool. So Yeah, there are guilty pleasures, and we hope that this was a guilty pleasure for an hour just to sort of sit and kick back and enjoy listening to us about, like certain things you shouldn't be listening to, little guilty something somethings. So, and we will speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.